Welcome, bienvenidos. We have a lot of folks trickling into the room. So excited. We have a lot of interest in this. While we wait for folks to trickle in, let me remind you to select your language by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your page. Regardless of whether you're listening to it in English or Spanish, you should select a language, otherwise you may have some audio issues. Para aquellos que nos están acompañando en español, por favor verifiquen la configuración de idioma usando el icono del globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla y seleccione el idioma apropiado. Me han informado que esto no funciona en Chromebooks. Por lo tanto, si está tratando de usar interpretación en español en un Chromebook, por favor cambie a otra computadora o ordenador. Gracias. I just also remembered that we've been informed that the interpretation does not work on Chromebooks. So if you're on a Chromebook, you might want to change devices. I also, while we wait, I want to invite you to visit the project website. This will be up for the entirety of the project. It'll be a central place to learn about the project, its timeline, and in particular, the engagement process that we're going to be rolling out. De nuevo, mientras esperamos, los invito a visitar la página en el web del proyecto. Esto estará disponible durante la totalidad del proyecto y será un lugar central para aprender sobre el proyecto y en particular sobre el proceso de participación que implementaremos. All right, so it looks like we have critical mass. Let's get started. Welcome, bienvenidos todos. My name is Manuel Cordero, and I'm the founder and owner of Civic, a design consultancy. I live and work in Providence, Rhode Island. And in fact, pre-pandemic, I walked through these spaces that we're going to be talking about today, the Greater Kennedy Plaza, every day. I am an architect and a community planner, and I have an enduring interest in engaging residents in conversations about public spaces. So this is an incredibly exciting opportunity for me. You're joining us for the first public meeting regarding the project to create a unified vision for public spaces of Greater Kennedy Plaza, including Kennedy Plaza, the skating rink, Burnside Park, the Exchange Terrace and Memorial Boulevard tunnels, Water Place Basin, and the Riverwalk. And the goal of the project is to create spaces that are welcoming and vibrant, by addressing everything from accessibility issues to lighting, to stormwater management, but also thinking about the future of uses on the site. Before I carry on, I'd like to share with you, we are launching today, and some of you may have seen in the reminders that there's a website for the project. The website is in both English and in Spanish. And this is a wonderful place for you to follow the work that we're going to be doing and follow the engagement. There's registration links for future public meetings, as well as surveys for you to continue your participation in this process. Another quick reminder, because I know that folks are still trickling in, check the language setting using the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Si necesita interpretación, verifique la configuración del idioma usando el icono del glóbalo en la parte inferior de la pantalla y seleccione el idioma apropiado. Before we dive in, I wanted to share with you as we dive into this process of engagement, we have been asked by the city, charged by the city with engaging residents in this conversation. And we established a set of guiding principles that we want to share with you.
and they're listed here. They include the goal of being both kind of broad and deep in our engagement, and to help elevate voices that have been excluded in the past. We want to be accountable, meaning that we want to honor your time and energy and your expertise as participants and the people who use these spaces. And we want to clearly communicate what is being decided and how decisions are being made. So those are our goals through this process. As a little bit of context, I want to share with you that as I said before, this is not just checking the box for me and for this team. We're doing this because you, the people who use these spaces or want to use these spaces, have an expertise that should be integrated into the design process. This timeline gives you a kind of broad overview of how we're going to be approaching it. We kicked off just a few short weeks ago, and at my insistence, not a single line has been drawn on a piece of paper before we went out and engaged with the public. So here we are, a couple of short weeks after kickoff, engaging in the conversation. But this is an ongoing conversation. And as you see here, we have a public meeting planned for February, at which point we imagine that the teams will have developed some concepts, and then another public meeting towards the April-May timeframe as we approach a preliminary design milestone. Throughout this process, the website will be up. We'll have surveys available to continually collect your feedback, and there's some other great tools for both visiting the site and engaging that are embedded in the website. So I encourage you to kind of keep participating and to use the website as a way of keeping up with what we're working on and to continue to participate. So without further ado, this is the agenda for tonight. We'll have a welcome by Mayor Jorge Lorza. Our Director of Planning, Bonnie Nickerson, will provide us some context about the project. Then we'll have a little bit of site history and project and site context just to help frame the conversation. And then by around 5:40, we're going to go out into breakout rooms. And you may have noticed that right now you're muted. As soon as we head into the breakout rooms, everybody will be able to unmute, and we'll have some structured activities for engaging in that conversation. And then we'll have share out at the very end. So stick around after breakout rooms just to hear what happened in the other rooms and to hear about next steps. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bonnie Nickerson, the Director of the Department of Planning and Development. If you'd like to unmute yourself and welcome us, Bonnie.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. We're so glad that you all could join us tonight. I was just thinking today, if we had to have this meeting a year ago, we would have canceled it because of the snowstorm. So it's kind of a bright light of 2020 in this really tough year that we can actually all gather while we're staying safe and warm at home. Hopefully we can all do this together. So I think that's, one positive thing we can take away from this year. So thinking about this year, earlier in the spring, it was about mid-March when we issued a call for proposals for this project to develop a unified vision for Greater Kennedy Plaza. And at the same time, life as we know it was about to change significantly, and the ruptures of this year were about to break open. So the pandemic, the economic crisis, the demands for justice, the spotlight on structural racism and structural inequality, and the toll of all that on our communities. So it was this crazy moment that we issued this call right at that same time. And so we really started to rethink this significant investment that we were going to make in public space in the heart of our city, and what that would be as a meaningful investment, thinking about the role that public space should take and reflecting that kind of increasing importance that public space plays in civic life that was really highlighted this year with the protests downtown and the way we all needed to be outside to be safe and healthy. And, just all of the roles that we kind of thought about public space. How can we do commerce outside? How can we do education outside? How can we just take the life of our city and do it outside? So we sort of broadened out our thinking about this project. And so that's one of the reasons why we're really so excited to embark on it right now. And why we at the city, so that's the planning department, the parks department, the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, and our sustainability office. We're really thrilled to be working with this great team led by Arup. They really truly understand what this opportunity is, what the challenge is, and what the responsibility is in front of us to reimagine the series of public spaces in the heart of our downtown. And when we say reimagine, what we mean is how can these spaces be more inclusive? How can they be more equitable and more connected? So and Manuel referenced this, when we're talking about those spaces, we're talking about Burnside Park and Biltmore Park, we're talking about the rink, we're talking about the Exchange Terrace Tunnel and the Memorial Boulevard Tunnel, Water Place Basin and the River Walks, and all of those spaces that make up really the heart of downtown. So from transit to all of the activities of sort of the creative art and culture life of our city, these spaces have to support everyday life and the well-being of all of us as residents, but also visitors. So there's kind of a lot of demands on these spaces. And yet they're very disconnected, they're disjointed, they're kind of isolated from each other. And at many times during the day, during the week, they're just kind of devoid of life and devoid of activity and people. So we think that they can just be serving our city so much better. So the design team is really going to be looking at options to improve accessibility, as Manuel said, stormwater and flooding mitigation, innovative approaches to lighting, enhancing the performance spaces, thinking about shade structures, temporary buildings, and other amenities that we can add to the spaces. And then, the flip side of that is not just kind of what are all the elements that we want to put in place, but then how do we activate and really program and make a plan for how to do that for all of these spaces. So it's really both of those things. So the team is going to develop 3 different design concepts, and then we'll select one as the final design. And then preliminary engineering work will begin for all of those elements within that final design. So the implementation is going to happen in 3 phases over about the next 4 years. So this work that we're doing now, the design and engineering work, and the first 2 phases of implementation are funded through the city's infrastructure plan, which is referred to as the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. So our capital improvement plan is sort of a rational way to fund and plan for city infrastructure needs year after year. So we update it every year. And then this is the second time that we've bonded for projects over a 5-year period. So last spring, we closed on a $120 million bond to fund a whole series of infrastructure projects over the next few years. And that's what's going to be the bulk of the funding for this work. And then the third and final phase is funded through a state program that focuses on stormwater improvement. So I just wanted to note that we can't go any further tonight until we address the elephant in the room. I think there is an incredible amount of interest in how this project relates to the state's multi-hub plan. And there should be. There's a real interest and passion around transit, and I think that is exactly right. Transit is an essential component of any thriving downtown. And our residents in particular depend on transit to access jobs, to access healthcare, services, education. So as part of any design scenario, we are really thinking about how and where best to accommodate RIPTA in a way that's actually a true value add to riders and is an improvement over what is there today. So just wanted to talk about that up front, that's very important to our team. And it's one of the base values that we are working from as we jump off into this project. So tonight, we really welcome all of you to engage in a conversation about the wider and broader set of physical, programmatic, and socioeconomic challenges and opportunities that are in and among and around all of these spaces. So that's kind of where we want to center the conversation. We really believe that if we create a single cohesive vision for this area, that we can develop the heart of our city to be a space that brings us together as a community in a much better way than what we have today. So with that, I'm really happy to welcome Mayor Lorza, who I know shares the commitment to everything that we just talked about and whose vision and leadership has really gotten us here today. And we're really excited to be welcoming here tonight to say a few words before we kick it back to Arab. Mayor.
All right, well, thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Manuel, and thank you to the team for bringing it to this point. Quiero comenzar dándole la bienvenida a todos. Muy buenas noches. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for participating in this process and sharing your perspective and lending your voice. I think that Bonnie teed this up perfectly. What I want to share with you is a personal story. I grew up with my family. We lived for 22 years on the second floor of a triple-decker on Cranston Street, just a five-minute ride from downtown. Growing up in that triple-decker was myself, my sister, my mother and my father, my aunt, and my two cousins, all kind of crunched in together. And, you know, one of the memories that most stand out to me is, you know, sometimes on Saturday evenings, what we would order pizza, and we'd all watch TV together in the living room TV, which was television set, which was probably like this big at the time. And I remember those moments so much because more than at any other time in my lifetime as a child, I felt like I had a community around me. It wasn't just my family, but that was where I felt most comfortable. That's where my entire world revolved around. It wasn't until a lot later that I began to explore everything that Providence had to offer. And I got to see that there's so many nooks and crannies and amazing places in Providence to explore. However, one of those places never felt like it was part of my community, and that's downtown. My parents worked in factories. They didn't work downtown. The only time that we would ever go downtown was if we had to pay taxes or, you know, fill out some official paperwork, that scary kind of stuff. And we never felt a connection to downtown. And even until today, oftentimes downtown gets pitted against the neighborhoods. You're prioritizing one against the other. And I think fundamentally that's because even today, for so many residents throughout our city, they don't have that physical connection to downtown. There isn't that inviting space where they can come. And as a point as an example, you know, I myself, a child of Providence, you know, very proud of my city. You know, I didn't attend even a water fire event until long after I had graduated from college. You know, this is in the 2000s. And I think this is and I don't think my family is unique in this way, and just not feeling as though downtown is their own. And especially in a moment like this where we're just physically isolated, I think that we have a new appreciation for the physical connections among folks. And every single one of us here today, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And this moment that we're living through really has driven home the point how important those connections to each other actually are. And what we have the opportunity to do is to create that physical space, that city center that brings us all together, that everyone relates to, that everyone feels welcome and feels that sense of community and family around. That's what this has the potential to be. And I know that that's no small task. That's a lot to ask for. But when I think about the places that I've traveled around the world, and I've fallen in love with different cities, just as I'm sure you all have, I can almost guarantee you that every single one of those cities that y'all have fallen in love with, they have that incredible public space right in the city center that makes you feel as though you're in the center and you're getting a full feel for the full feel of the pulse of that community. Well, that's what we have the potential to create here. We've created that feeling in isolated incidents such as PVD Fest and other times that folks have come together, but those are one-offs. And I want to make sure that what we're building here is actually a place where community happens. We believe here in the city that the outside of our buildings are the inside of our city. And this project at Kennedy Plaza really goes to the core. So, keep that in mind. Let's create that sense of community that everyone feels connected to. And I think we'll be doing generations of Providence residents in the future. Just a great service. So thank you once again, everybody, for coming together in this way. And I really look forward to engaging in this process with you.
Thank you, Mayor Elorza, for both a compelling history as well as a compelling vision for the future of these spaces. I'd like to take this opportunity. I want to acknowledge that there are more than 150 folks in the room. So yay, love it. Love the participation. I also want to acknowledge that we have some of our council members present. Councilwoman Anthony from Ward 2 and Councilman Gonzalez from Ward 1, welcome as well. So I'd like to now invite Alban Bassuet to share his screen and unmute. Alban is the project manager from Arup and is leading the design and planning team for the project.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Okay.
You can.
I'm gonna share my screen. Can you also see my screen? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name is Alban Bassuet. I'm a principal at Arup. I'm going to switch this a second. And so I lead this project in collaboration with a local architecture firm, Ultramodern, and landscape architecture firm Stimson Studio in Boston. We're a pretty large team of planners, designers, engineers, and for our mandate, we're bringing a number of disciplines to rethink some of the public spaces of downtown, from urban planning to architecture, experience design, resiliency, economics. We've worked on similar revitalization projects like this before in the country and abroad. Many of us happen to live and work in Providence like me, and we come regularly to the area, whether to catch the bus, bringing our kids to the playground or ice skate and come to PVD Fest or water fire events. So this project feels quite close to our heart. Now, Cities Downtown is the convergence of our communities and activities. They are vital to the life of our city and communities. And so those are the areas that we are going to focus on: Kennedy Plaza, the rink, the tunnels on the Exchange Terrace, the tunnel on the Memorial Boulevard, the basin, the river walks, and how they connect to Steeple Street. We are at a unique time in the United States to rethink our public spaces and how to make them more inclusive and equitable. And revitalizing an area of town does not mean pushing anyone away. It does not mean to create new spaces that will only benefit a few afterwards. In fact, for us, it means to create essential amenities that will benefit everyone and bring everyone together at a crucial time when we desperately need more human connection and understanding. So we want to create safer areas, provide some amenities for our unhoused population, like shelter, access to food and hygiene, more areas that will be more resilient to sea level rise and strong storm events, with better and safer access to transportation that will continue to benefit workers, students, and communities of colors, low income and unhoused communities, and to avoid some of the conflicts that we see on site between bus traffic and pedestrian flow, like we see here, and to create an area that will be also open to new methods of transportation that will come in the years to come, from personal mobility, electric buses, and vehicles that will respond to people's demand. We want the area to attract all of our vibrant communities from Broad Street to Broadway, Old Navy, and College Hill, and the rest of the state. We also want to make the area a lot more fun. It's already a lot of fun for PVD Fest and some of the water fire events, but we want this to happen every day. So a lot of ideas that we are having in our minds today, and we want to share those, or we want to receive some ideas from you, will include, farmers markets, community boards, access to digital technologies, art programs, play areas for kids and families, interactive water features, public art, places for dance and skateboard, hip hop, beatboxing, and experiences inside the tunnels. And we're planning to work with the city so that profitable activities in and around the site will help to maintain and operate new facilities. We're also planning to work with the city to encourage micro businesses and businesses of color to flourish on the site with access to electrical power and truck, for example. Now, we're not here to sell you anything. We're here to hear your voices. We want to hear everything you have to say about the area that you might come up with, and hopefully we can come up with a plan that will respond to everyone's insights. We will ask you questions about what you expect from the area, what amenities you would like to have access to, and how you would like to see this area flourish for the future. So we built an online platform for you to engage with, website, www.imagine downtown PVD. You will be able to find there a survey. We can fill out some, answer some questions. You'll also be able to find a virtual tour of the area. We did a number of 3D photography and 3D sound recording at, got a number of positions all around the area. In case you're not familiar enough with it, so if you go there on the virtual engage tab, you will see there on the left a little map where you can, kind of navigate the place. And if you hit the little comment tab in the bottom at the center of the page, another survey comes up, and you can here leave comments, impressions about the area, and answer also some questions. This will be coming up. Now, just to wrap this up, if you'd like to know a little bit more about us, we're our team of about 100 people working on this project, covering 7 nationalities with almost equal female-male representation, including binary and non-binary individuals. We were selected by the city for this project for our approach to placemaking that combines urban design and a human-centric experience design approach. Something that we've applied to a number of projects in the past, like in Philly for the Dilworth Plaza, similar context, and Providence, a historic district, and transportation hub near the site, with now a very popular ice rink that turns into a very popular water feature in the summer, or how we've done it in the riverwalks of King's Cross in London. So I welcome you, and I thank you all for your participation today. We need your input, and I'm very much looking forward to a fruitful discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alban. I love those images. I particularly love the seesaws, the lit seesaws, and the big ice sculptures, although I have one of those ice sculptures in my backyard now, and I don't want it. If I could now invite Marissa Brown is joining us. We have one other brief presentation, and then we'll jump out into our conversations. Marissa is the Assistant Director of Programs and Adjunct Lecturer in Public Humanities at Brown University, and she's going to provide us a brief and critical history of the site areas. So if you're ready, Marissa, take it away.
Mute.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Great. And then I need to share screen access too. Ah, there we go. Okay, great. Thanks, Manuel. It's good to be here with everyone tonight on this snowy night. I'm going to keep it very brief and as a result, maybe a little bit fast, but we are going to get through the site history in just a few minutes. And there's a lot to say and a lot to show you. I know a lot of people know this site history, so for some it's just sort of a review of what is there. Before I begin, I've been invited to give a land acknowledgement, and I'd like to read one that's based on a land acknowledgement that was crafted by Larissa Nez, who is a first-year student in my department at Brown, who is a citizen of the Diné Nation. I want to begin by acknowledging that the current Kennedy Plaza site occupies the traditional homelands of the Narragansett and Wampanoag peoples. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Rhode Island's tribal nations, for Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. With this acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and commit ourselves to working to make this space responsive to the needs of Indigenous peoples. Thank you. Before the 17th century, the site was stewarded by the Narragansetts, who had control over much of modern Rhode Island. According to Narragansett historians, land was not something that could be owned by one person or group per se. It was considered a shared resource that might be controlled more by one tribe than another, but there was really no ownership per se. As a result, villages could move around, curbing deforestation, soil erosion, and wildlife depletion. This is the first plan for the site that would evolve into Kennedy Plaza. The second plan took shape after 1635, when Roger Williams was deeded this land by two Narragansett sachems, Canonicus and Miantinomi. As this map shows, Williams created a land trust and deeded plots to himself and to 12 of the early settlers. This is a later map after those 12 were created, divvying up plots of about 100 feet, stretching back 5 to 6 acres. These European settlers divided the marshland and meadow west of the Mashassac River, planting and extracting timber and other natural resources to support the construction and expansion of their farms. As these first settlers built fences to mark their property and enclose their livestock, they transformed an open landscape into a grid of privately held lots. What had been collectively held, stewarded, not owned, became a commodity that could be divided up and passed down within nuclear families, its value now tied to the resources that could be extracted from it. In the 18th century, a small bridge served settlers traveling to and from their land across the river, especially those bringing back produce to sell in Market Square or bringing droves of livestock back for slaughter. By the end of the century, the bridge was sturdy enough to handle horses and wagons, and you can see roads starting to develop across the river. Over this century, slavery comes to take on a more central role in the local economy and social life. For our site, the context is relevant as this is a global market with Providence and nearby Newport as part of this new global trade network. These maps here indicate the pace of change during the first part of the 19th century on this site. Keep an eye out for the Salt Cove, which you can see on the colored map on the right, just above our site. Over the course of the 19th century, the cove is reshaped. It becomes a public park for a few decades, which you can see on the left, becomes polluted, and then is filled in 1892. You can see that underway on the right. With tracks built over the infill. As many may know, the circular tidal basin at Water Place Park is a modern memory marker for this cove. This shows an overlay so you can see where the cove was in relation to what's there now. To situate yourself, note the old Union Station, now the Rhode Island Foundation headquarters, and the State House campus, which you can see all built on infill. In the 1800s, the town spreads across the river as it grows from an agricultural and maritime economy into a manufacturing economy. An indicator of the site's new centrality is that City Hall moves from Market Square to its current building in 1878. The photo at left shows the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in place before the construction of City Hall. And then on the right, you can see City Hall now built there at the end with the Union Depot train station on the right. And you can just make out the cove behind it with the Ambrose Burnside Monument just there in the foreground. At this point, the cove has been filled in and the site takes on its modern shape. On the left, you can see Union Station with the State House in the background and the underpass where the ice rink is now. On the right, you can see the back of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument and Burnside Park on the left. We can start to see here how this site since then has continued to play multiple roles: shopping, an industrial center, a transportation node for people and goods traveling locally, regionally, and nationally, and civic heart of this growing city. There's a sense of ambition that is legible in this space, ambition to be a great modern city, to impress upon residents and visitors Providence's importance. This energy, wealth, and urge to construct urban landmarks carried forward into the first third of the 20th century when the Biltmore Hotel and Industrial Trust building were built. Now the plaza was fully defined. Over the last 100 years, the site has served well for civic and community gatherings, celebrations, and protest. A lot of living has been done in this space over time. To form community, we need spaces where we can come together. And in Providence, Kennedy Plaza is this space. There are two sites in the city that are places of storytelling, where we tell stories about who we are as a city, a state, and a nation. And that's the State House and Kennedy Plaza. So this place is deeply significant in terms of our sense of collective memory and identity. Who is represented here and who is absent? And what story do we want public and commemorative art to tell in this space? I think many agree that the time is right for change. We desperately need to invite into this space a broad cross-section of voices that represent the vitality and the resilience of our city. When I look at Kennedy Plaza, I'm struck by the velocity of change in 400 years. Some of the most significant changes, such as the reshaping and then filling in of the cove, happened over only about 50 years. I'm moved by the ambition of this place, the desire to see it filled with the most beautiful and impressive buildings and the pride that gave rise to the monuments and the public art in this place. But I'm also moved by the absences in this space. It's difficult to think about the communities of color that have been pushed out of this and nearby spaces through the centuries, and to imagine what Providence would be like if this hadn't happened, if Snowtown hadn't been demolished, if Mount Hope hadn't been redlined, and if I-95 hadn't cut through and displaced neighborhoods in the south and west sides. On a deeper level, I'm also thinking back to the 1635 plan of the city and of the site and the city, and the way that it changed this land from something that had been collectively stewarded for hundreds of years to a series of individually owned plots, which we have gradually diminished through extraction. This brings us to today. It feels as though we are coming through a period of intense, sometimes dark, and often angry reckoning, leading us to a redefinition of the American story. Looking ahead, I feel hopeful that we might emerge from this period of critical reflection with more sensitivity to the ways in which power is inscribed into public urban space and to concepts of spatial justice. This space has the capacity to bring people together in community in a way that no other space can. It's exciting to think about the possibilities for a creative transformation that reflects the diversity and vitality of the city that we all love so much. Thanks, Manuel.
Thank you, Marissa. All right, so we are at the cusp of breaking out into our breakout rooms. Let me just prepare you as you head out into your conversations. We have just heard such kind of inspiring vision of what might be, and also an eye-opening view of our history. The need to consider who our spaces are for and what do they represent, and you know, the critically important question of how these spaces function and then how they meet our needs for the future. This is all great. As we go into our rooms, I just want to set a few kind of community agreements for us in the breakout rooms. This is a different space right now, right? We're not all in the same room, so things are a little bit different, but I think in some ways these broadly carry through in whatever space we're in. I ask you each to be present and listen to each other. That means speaking one at a time. Be generous both in your sharing and in your listening and making space for others. Be patient with the technology, with us as facilitators, with each other, and be curious. The approach to the conversation should be constructive and collaborative. I do have to say that if anybody displays abusive behavior or uses offensive language, the team will remove you from the meeting. So just please be mindful and join us in a good conversation. We have an amazing team of facilitators. They're all members of our community who have similar beliefs about the power and importance of engagement in processes like this. In the interest of time, I've included their bios on the slide, and I'll have them introduce themselves in the room. But I invite you to engage with them in a vibrant and respectful conversation. In the first blue room, we have Aya. In the second green one, we have MJ. In the third yellow room, we have Sagri. In the fourth orange room, we have Shay. In the fifth red room, we have Tracy. And I will be facilitating the sixth purple room. Before we transition and as Lexi gets us ready to send us off into breakout rooms, I just wanted to tell you what to expect. We've designed an activity that should be fun and intuitive, but it's a structure for the conversation. Don't feel pressure to participate in any single way. One of the benefits of the format that we're currently in is that we have multiple ways of recording your feedback. We will record the breakout rooms and honor all feedback provided verbally through the chat script, as well as written on any of the shared boards that we'll be using. So, you know, if you have a lot to say, but you don't feel like you can say it verbally, toss it in the chat script. So with that said, I'm just going to invite us all to head out into the breakout rooms. Lexi, send us away. In a moment, you should all see invites to join breakout rooms. All right, I'll see everybody in a breakout room. And anybody who has any troubles with the breakout rooms, Lexi will be in the main room to help us. Lexi, will you give me a sense of when folks are we're almost all back? Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, that was a lot to cover. I'm so glad that we had that opportunity to do so. I would like to invite my facilitators now to give us a quick kind of overview of the conversations in each of the rooms. And maybe we'll start with the blue room. Aya, do you want to give us a brief little synopsis of your conversation?
Yeah, so in terms of what we do see in the space, people raise eating, drinking, a lot of the activity that we're pretty accustomed to. An important thing someone mentioned was parking and day shelters for homeless. It being a space that people are also interacting with cars being considered, as well as the homeless population being identified. Thought that was pretty valuable. Not that I have any assumptions about the way people identify, but just that perspective was brought into the space, we thought was pretty important. As we were talking about things that we hope to see, I think a really interesting conversation unfortunately got cut off was around activity in the space and things that people didn't want to see. And it was a contentious conversation, even in the language being used, the term undesirable activity or undesirable individuals. And there's something at the heart there that I think is really important to unpack and further talk about. There's a lot around what should be done, but I think even the conversation about how do we describe it, how do we define it, how do we discuss it, I think is something that just really came out as like a really important thing in terms of activity that we maybe don't want to see or want to better understand.
Great, thank you, Aya. Group 2, Green, MJ, you want to offer a little debrief?
Yeah, Green Group was awesome. Thank you, Green Group, for spending some time together. We spoke about the varied uses, and it was cool to have a really mixed group of people in terms of how we use the downtown space currently. We have performers, we have people who give tours in the area, we have people who take the bus frequently, who bike and walk frequently, who pass through. We did talk about how a lot of us feel like it's somewhere we pass through and is not necessarily or is not often a destination unless there is something going on, but that it might be interesting to see it become a bit less of a pass through and a bit more of a robust and exciting place to visit. In terms of how we want to use public spaces in downtown Providence, this was my favorite part of our conversation. Our group was really thinking big about both some really necessary amenities like bathrooms and more spaces for performance and for hanging out, like I mentioned, better ADA access, better accessibility in general in a physical sense. And also one really important point that many of us agreed on was wanting to any plan that's created to be one that resists displacement of people who use the space, particularly people experiencing homelessness. There was so many cool ideas thrown out there. Experiences with nature and animals were of interest to some people. So really kind of like appealing to families and making it a place that is more than a pass through. And then in terms of making it a more inclusive, accessible place, again, we sort of just went a little further on many of our thoughts and on who is not in the Zoom room here with us, who should really have a say. So that's it from Green Group. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Third group, Yellow, Sagri.
There we go. So we had a very cool conversation in the yellow room. We've done both on the mirror board, but also on in the conversation. We talked about kind of off the bat, the need to make the public spaces accessible, make it safe for people with all ranges of mobility to use. And that was something that was underscored in conversation. Another piece was about, making it more welcoming to teens who, it seemed to be people who kind of move through the space, like MJ referred to a minute ago, but perhaps more of a destination or something they can actively engage with. And then we talked, there was a plug for performance spaces. And we had a good conversation around safety and the many different ways in which it could be manifested, lighting and more eyes on the street being, the sort of obvious ones, but also we talked about activating public spaces, including the river, beyond just the events. If there could just be ongoing engagement and activity that would draw people and draw different kinds of people to use the space. Those were kind of the highlights of the Yellow Room.
Thank you, Sagri. That's great. Orange for Shay. Can you share the happenings?
Yeah, my group, wow, we had a spectrum of things, but a lot of common threads with Sagri, MJ, and Aya's groups. We did talk about accessibility for people of all body and mobility. We did talk about like, what does it mean to create spaces for young people? Like some ideas like sport activities, like, you know, something that came up actually a lot was how to make the spaces be more be places where people can be stationary. Like being stationary and being there for a long time could be like, people could feel safe and entertained and have things to do, and that involving like people who are already using Kennedy Plaza, and also like newcomers who were new to the city. So they're like Aya and MJ as well. Like there was a big concern about displacing folks that already use this space, and exchanging that for like having new shiny bright things to add like more energy or tourism or bring tourism. So how to reach that balance. So some of the members of my group also talked about what kind of community resources should be provided throughout these spaces. And there was also a shout out for the Park Friends group for the work that they do already with supporting performances. Also some activities that are non-commercial, because it's great to have, you know, to go downtown and spend money and go eat and have those kinds of experiences, but also things where you don't have to spend money, and that can be conducive to more people using the spaces. So yeah, a lot of stuff that already my colleagues in their own groups shared, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shay. Red group number 5, Tracy.
Hi, folks. Yeah, I think our group also mirrored a couple of the things that have been brought up already. We had a great representation of artists and young folks who shared some stories about how they've used the space as youth, and some desire for infrastructure that does retain people in or invite folks to stay a while in downtown. That would include some of the more utilized suggestions, such as like chess boards, some fitness equipment that's stationary that a lot of parks are exploring for using to make folks really feel like they're allowed to be there. We want to make sure that it's a racially just place and that we take care of the folks that are already using the space. There was some suggestion for heating centers as well, to really support the folks that are using the space currently, as well as folks that would be in the future. So we also had some talk about public forum infrastructure, skate park infrastructure, and then some of the mixed use aspects came up as well. So even though some folks may not want to purchase something to go downtown, some folks do. We had the input of people coming from out of town and enjoying downtown, and there being options for both in the space. And connecting spaces, places for groups to sit and enjoy and stay a while, like I mentioned, and then everything else that's been mentioned. Lively combo.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a great conversation in our room. Interestingly, I think some of the things that you have brought up, and again, it sounds like the question of what activates the space came up. And you know, I think the problematization of commerce as activation came up. Like, you know, is commerce the way that we activate these spaces? It was a good question. We had a good conversation about some of the social services and what's the role of public space and social service, and you know, both the kind of push and pull of what brings people to this space, and and how are they supported in this space, and what are the other spaces that support it? You know, what is the network in the city that supports them? There were some interesting questions about decision making and who makes decisions and who are the kind of power brokers making decisions. There were questions about the 2018 plan. A lot of interest, I think, like everybody, a lot of interest in the kind of transit question and buses. And also a great conversation about kind of re-examining the space through the lens of history. So looping back to that conversation about history and the way that we have kind of moved towards, you know, away from kind of collective visions and more towards the kind of commercialized visions of public space making. So great conversation. We are coming right up on time. So I want to leave a little bit of room first to thank all of you for being here. We have more than 120 people on a snowy night, which is amazing, so exciting. I want to thank the facilitators and Lexi Whipple has been in the background kind of doing all the work to make the Zoom room work. So thank you, Lexi. I want to hand it over to Martina now. Martina Haggerty from the planning department is going to say some closing remarks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. As Manuel said, we very much appreciated all of your input tonight and all of the facilitators who helped gather that input. A lot of folks have asked what is next. Our next public meeting is planned for February. So if you registered for this event, you are now on our email list, and you'll get an email once we have set the date and are ready to notify people about that meeting. At that point, we're going to be ready to share some ideas with you to get your feedback on, based on everything we've heard here this evening and everything we hear through the various forms of input that you can provide through our website. So again, the website is imaginedowntownpvd.com. So check it out. If your friends or neighbors weren't able to attend tonight, they can also go to that website to sign up to be on our email list to hear about future public meetings and events and milestones. If we can flick back a slide, or maybe it was forward a slide, we have Jessica Flaumer's contact information. Jessica is a principal planner in our office in the planning department. And if you have any questions, again, that come up between now and the next public meeting, feel free to email her. And Manuel's contact information is also on the screen here. Their contact information should also be on the website, I believe. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I know everyone has other things they probably want to get to tonight, but we appreciate you spending your evening with us and hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Stay warm, stay safe.